When you run a Python program, everything happens in memory. Variables, lists, calculations, but when the program ends, everything disappears. So how do we make sure that our data persists and stays afterwards? By storing them in files. Files is how we permanently store our data, whether that is text, numbers, images, you name it. So in this video, we'll look into how Python interacts with files and how does it actually open them. And by the end, we'll have a mental model for how Python connects to files stored on your desk, which is an essential skill for any data processing or any data analytics work. Let's start with the basics. A file is simply a sequence of bytes that are stored on your desk. And when you load them into Python, Python interprets that into one of two ways. It's either a text file for anything that is .txt, CSV, or even .python, or binary files, which are basically raw data that isn't directly readable. Anything like .png files or MP3 files or .exe files. All of those cannot be directly read when you load them into your Python script. So when you open a text file in Python, Python automatically encodes and decodes the characters using a UTF-8 system by default. Let's see that in code. So over here in the resource folder, I have an example.txt file, which is basically 3 lines of text. So I'll go back to my notebook here and I'll create a file connection here using the open function, and I will provide the path to where that file is being stored. I'll also provide the mode in which I want to read this file, or I want to open or establish this connection, which in this case is going to be a read mode. And now if I print out the F connection and make sure that I close the connection at the end and run this code, we get this text, which basically means that this is a text file. The file name is called example.txt, and we acquired it from this location or from this path. We are opening it in read mode, and the encoding that was used was UTF-8, as we've mentioned before. Now keep in mind, when we open a file here, we do not actually load the file itself in memory. We're only establishing a connection to the disk so that we can read the files as we need later on. So we could do things like f.name, f.encoding, and if we print this, we basically get this metadata out in the output here. So this kind of gives you a quick insight into how files are being used in Python. Now, we all know that files are always going to be stored in folders or in what we call directories in Python language. So whenever you're loading a file, you need to know exactly where that file is, and you can refer to it either by the absolute path or by the relative path, which basically is relative to where the file or where the script is being executed from. So in this particular case, I can right click over on my file and copy the path. I can provide the full path, which is going all the way to the root of a disk, or I can provide the path here relative to where that script is being run, which in this case, I just needed to indicate that start from the current folder of where that file is, and then navigate into the resource folder into the examples.txt file. So a lot of times when you're trying to import a file and you get an error that basically says the file does not exist, one of the first things you want to check is, did I provide the path correctly, or am I providing the path relative to the script that I'm using here correctly? Also, another common mistake that a lot of us would run into is that if you open a file, you have to remember to close it. Otherwise, the operating system or the script here is going to actually leave that file locked, so you would not be able to access it afterwards, and it will continue to use your computer resources even though your program may have been done. This is why in the next video, we're going to talk about another way that we can import or open files in a way that even if we do forget the close statement here, it would not exhaust our computer's resources.